I was looking at a map of North Wales this morning, preparing for this deep dive, and I honestly got a little confused right off the bat.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, I typed in the name of our topic, Menai Bridge, and the map dropped a pin on, a bridge.
Right. Makes sense.
It does. But then I zoomed out a tiny bit, and the pin was actually sitting on a cluster of houses and streets next to the bridge.
Ah, yes. That is a very common point of confusion for people looking at the area.
So just to be absolutely clear with you and everyone listening, we're not spending the next chunk of time talking about suspension cables and iron chains, are we?
We might mention them in passing, but no. Today we're looking at the town itself, the actual community that sits right in the shadow of that famous structure.
Okay, good. Because looking at the geographical and historical records we have for the town of Menai Bridge in Anglesey, this place feels like it has a serious split personality.
It really does.
I mean, it's got a name that belongs to a piece of infrastructure, but a history that goes back way further. You've got a fake TV set built inside a garage, and then a very real promenade built by refugees.
That is a fantastic way to frame our mission today. It's a town of disguises. On the surface, to you and me driving through, it looks like a scenic crossing point.
Yeah, a postcard spot.
Exactly. But if you dig into the local records, you find a prison ship for naughty boys, you find ancient hermits, and a community that has just constantly reinvented itself to survive.
So the place is known in English as Menai Bridge. But if you went back in time to, say, the year 1500 and asked a local for directions to Menai Bridge...
You'd get completely blank stares.
Right, because there was no bridge.
Right. For the vast majority of its history, this place wasn't defined by a bridge at all. It was defined by the water. The Welsh name for the town is Porthaethwy.
Porthaethwy, which is a bit of a mouthful if you aren't used to speaking Welsh.
It can be.
Yeah.
But it breaks down quite logically if we look at the etymology.
Okay, let's break it down.
So Porth means harbor or port.
Okay, pretty straightforward.
And the second part, Daethwy. That refers to a local Celtic tribe. And later it became the name of a medieval administrative district, what they called a comote, named Daethwy.
So literally translated, it's the port of the Daethwy tribe.
Exactly. Port of the Daethwy.
That immediately changes the vibe for me. Like, Menai Bridge sounds like civil engineering. Port of the Daethwy sounds like a settlement with really deep ancient roots.
And those roots go deep specifically because of the geography. If you look at the Menai Strait, that's the strip of water separating the island of Anglesey from the Welsh mainland, it is not a uniform width.
No, it pinches in.
Yes. This specific spot where the town sits is the narrowest point.
The ultimate bottleneck.
The bottleneck. So if you were, say, a Roman soldier in the 1st century and you wanted to cross over to crush the Druids on Anglesey.
Which they did.
Which they absolutely did. Or if you were a cattle drover in the Middle Ages trying to get your herd to market, this is where you crossed. It was the shortest distance over some very treacherous water.
So long before the suspension bridge, this was basically a ferry town.
A massive ferry hub. We have written records of the ferry operating there, going all the way back to 1292.
Wow, 1292.
And it almost certainly operated for centuries before anyone bothered to write it down. The entire economy was maritime. The whole town was essentially a waiting room for the tide.
I just imagine that creates a very specific kind of atmosphere, just hundreds of people constantly passing through, staring at the water, waiting for it to calm down enough to cross.
It creates a very transient, bustling energy. But then the year 1826 arrives.
Enter Thomas Telford.
Exactly. Thomas Telford builds his magnificent suspension bridge. And suddenly, overnight, you don't need the ferry anymore.
Which sounds like an absolute economic disaster for a town built around a ferry. Did the local economy just collapse?
You would really think so.
Yeah.
But this is where the town's resilience first shows up in the sources. The ferry business died, yes. But the town pivoted.
How's that?
They started using their waterfront for shipbuilding. They became a major hub for timber export. It became a serious commercial center in its own right. They essentially refused to just become a drive-through for the bridge traffic.
They adapted. Speaking of the waterfront, you mentioned it's the narrowest point, but looking at the geographical charts, it also looks like the messiest point of the strait.
Oh, without a doubt.
Like, it's not just open water. There are rocks and little islands everywhere.
It's basically a mini archipelago within a strait. It is incredibly treacherous if you don't know exactly what you're doing. The locals actually call this stretch of water the Swellies.
The Swellies. That sounds kind of cute, but I'm guessing it's not.
It is not cute. The tidal currents are ferocious. They swirl and pull. But right off the shore, you have these little islands dotted around. Unis Felog, Unis Gaint. Ynys Castell.
And the really notable one, Church Island.
Yes, Ynys Tysilio. That is personally my favorite spot for understanding the hidden layers of this town. You can actually walk out to it today across a short causeway.
I've seen pictures of this in our research. It looks incredibly peaceful. You've got this old stone church surrounded by trees, but it's right next to this massive, noisy, modern bridge.
That's the perfect contrast. Back in the 9th century, a saint named Tysilio lived on that island as a hermit.
Wait, a hermit? Right in the middle of a busy crossing point.
Well, he chose it specifically because at high tide, the water completely cut him off from the mainland. It forced isolation.
I always find that kind of historical irony so funny. You know, a guy picks a rock in the freezing water specifically to get away from people.
Right.
And 1,200 years later, we literally build a causeway so tourists can just stroll out and stand exactly where he was trying to be left alone.
It is deeply ironic, but that little island is sort of the spiritual ancestor of the town. Even today, the modern town of Menai Bridge is officially part of the parish of Landisilia.
Oh, named after him.
Exactly. So you have the flashy, heavy engineering of Telford's bridge on one side, and then the quiet, stubborn spirituality of this 9th century hermit on the other.
But looking at the area today, the water isn't just about ancient history or religion, is it? Because when I was reading up on the current layout of the town, I noticed a huge cluster of science facilities.
You did. Menai Bridge is actually home to the School of Ocean Sciences, which is part of Bangor University.
Why there? I mean, is it just for the nice view of the strait?
Not at all. It's precisely because of those ferocious currents we just talked about. The swellies, the extreme tides, the unique biodiversity of that bottleneck. It serves as a living laboratory literally on their doorstep.
That's amazing.
They even have a dedicated research ship, the Prince Mad Dog. You'll very often see it docked right at the town pier.
So the exact same treacherous water that kept Roman soldiers at bay is now attracting marine scientists from all over the world.
Precisely. It's a really beautiful continuity. The town has always looked to the strait for its living, whether that's ferrying, shipbuilding, or now oceanography.
But, and I want to shift gears here, looking at the historical sources, the water wasn't always a place of learning or holiness. There is a chapter in the records here that genuinely creeped me out.
I think I know where you're going.
The HMS Clio.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Clio. This is definitely the darker side of the Victorian era coming to Menai Bridge.
Because when I first saw the name HMS Clio in the notes, I thought, ooh, a nice historic ship for tourists to look at. But the locals back then didn't see it that way at all, did they?
No, they didn't. For nearly 50 years, from 1877 all the way to 1920, this massive wooden battleship was moored permanently in the strait. And it cast a very long, very dark shadow over the town.
The local rumor was that it was a prism, like a floating Alcatraz for kids.
That was the local folklore. It was so intimidating that mothers in Menai Bridge would actually use it as a threat. They'd point out to the water and say, behave yourself, or I'll send you to the Clio.
That is some terrified Victorian parenting right there.
It worked.
But was it actually a prison? If you look at the official records, what was it?
Technically speaking, no. Culturally, maybe. Officially, it was classified as an industrial training ship.
What does that mean?
It was run by the North Wales Society. The goal was to take young men, we're talking boys, aged 11 to 15, who were considered destitute or, quote, in need of discipline.
In need of discipline. That is such a loaded, vague Victorian phrase.
It really is.
Yeah.
It heavily implies that being poor and having bad behavior are the exact same thing.
Right.
The whole idea was to take these wild, impoverished boys and industrialize them, turn them into useful, obedient sailors for the British Empire.
So they taught them what, sailing stuff?
Yes. Knots, navigation, repairing sails, swabbing decks.
The catch is they couldn't leave.
They absolutely could not leave. They were stuck on that ship. And the discipline was notoriously harsh. The historical records show that corporal punishment using the birch and the cane was extremely common.
Some accounts even described it as openly cruel.
Yes. It was a brutal environment.
It's such a jarring visual to think about. You know, you have these wealthy Victorian tourists coming from London to admire Telford's beautiful, elegant bridge. And right below them, moored in the freezing water, is this wooden ship full of trapped 11-year-old boys being beaten into submission.
It reflects the Victorian mindset perfectly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They built an iron bridge to conquer nature, and they used a wooden ship to conquer human nature. It was all entirely about control.
I want to completely flip the script now, because we just talked about boys being trapped in Menai Bridge against their will, But just a few years later, just up the road, you had a group of people arriving who were incredibly desperate to be there.
Yes. We're moving forward to 1914 now, the outbreak of the First World War.
The Belgian refugees.
This is a story that I think really defines the true heart of the town. When the German army invaded Belgium, a group of refugees fleeing the city of Mechelen managed to make it all the way across Europe to Menai Bridge.
And the town just took them in.
They did. Open arms. They were housed in local homes in the village hall. People shared what little they had. But here is where the historical records get really fascinating.
Yeah, the skill set of these refugees.
Exactly. These weren't just general laborers. The sources note that many of these men from Mechelen were highly skilled in marquetry.
Marquetry, just so everyone is on the same page, that's like fancy wood inlay, right?
Yes.
Like making those intricate geometric patterns on expensive cabinets and furniture.
Exactly that.
Oh.
It is highly delicate, precise, indoor work. It requires soft hands, fine tools, a warm workshop.
But these refugees wanted to say thank you to the town that saved them.
They did, and they didn't have any money to give. So they decided to build something for the community.
But they didn't build a giant communal cabinet.
No, they did not. They decided to build a massive stone promenade right along the edge of the Menai Strait.
I just cannot get over that image. You have these fine artisans, men who are used to working with delicate veneers and varnishes out there in the Welsh weather, hauling heavy limestone rocks, battling those freezing tides we talked about, just to build a seawall.
It is a profound gesture of gratitude.
Yeah.
They took that craftsman's patience, the same patience needed for fine woodwork, and applied it to brute civil engineering.
Where exactly did they build it?
The path runs from Church Island, where our hermit was, all the way down to another little tidal island called Carrigurhallen. They worked on it manually for 2 solid years, from 1914 to 1916.
And the craziest part is, it's still there. You can go walk on it today.
You can. It's officially known as the Belgian Promenade. Now, full disclosure, it was heavily rebuilt in the 1960s to reinforce it, but the soul of it, the actual foundation, is still that original refugee labor.
There's a really touching note in the sources here about a ceremony they held in 1965.
Yes, when they officially reopened the rebuilt promenade, the town managed to track down the only surviving refugee from that original 1914 group.
A man named Edward Wilhelms.
Yes, and he came back to Menai Bridge to cut the ribbon.
That just brings it full circle in such a beautiful way. It wasn't just a construction project for them. It was their permanent mark on the world. A message saying, we were here, you helped us survive, and this is the path we left behind for you.
It stands in such stark, striking contrast to the HMS Clio.
Oh, completely.
The ship was a symbol of punishment and confinement. And then right next to it, physically right next to it on the strait, the promenade is a symbol of refuge and openness.
It's amazing. And you know, this theme of hidden layers just keeps coming up in this deep dive. We have the hidden history of the refugees, the hidden history of the boys on the ship. But there is a part of Menai Bridge that is literally hidden in plain sight because it's completely fake.
Ah, yes. You've discovered the town's Hollywood connection.
Well, Hollywood might be stretching it a bit. Maybe Welsh Hollywood. I'm talking about the TV show.
Found around. It is a very, very popular soap opera broadcast on the Welsh language television channel, S4C, and it has been filmed right in the town for years.
But they didn't just point cameras at the existing streets. They actually terraformed parts of the town to fit the script.
They did. There's a garage right in the town center, an old, disused commercial garage building that the production company, Rondo Media, basically took over.
And what did they do to it?
They converted the entire front facade of this garage into a fake row of shops.
So if you're a tourist, you could be walking down the main street looking for a snack, and you see what looks like a nice little cafe or a newsagent.
And you try to open the door, and it's just a flat wooden set built onto the brickwork of a garage.
That sums up that town of disguises theme we started with so perfectly. You look at it and ask, is it a garage? No, it's a bakery. Wait, is it a bakery? No, it's a television set.
It really blurs the line for the locals, too. Imagine you see your own real town on television every single night, but the town on TV is full of manufactured drama and businesses that don't actually exist.
It adds this layer of total surrealism to daily life there.
It does.
Speaking of surrealism and drama, we absolutely have to talk about the fair, Ffair Borth. Because if the TV set is fake chaos, The sources make this sound like real, unadulterated chaos.
Oh, it is absolute controlled chaos. This is a massive tradition in the town dating all the way back to 1691.
1691, so again, long before Telford's Bridge even existed.
Centuries before.
Yeah.
It originally started as a horse fair, then it evolved into a livestock market. Today, it's mostly modern fairground rides, food stalls, and games.
But when we say fair, we need to clarify for you listening. Don't picture a nice, polite little event in a grassy field on the outskirts of town.
No, not at all. Where is it held?
It is in the town.
Right in the streets.
The rides, the waltzers, the bumper cars, the stalls, they physically occupy the main streets of Menai Bridge. The normal traffic completely stops. The town is just taken over by neon lights and machinery.
I love that intensity. It's terribly inconvenient for anyone trying to get to work, but it is tradition, and tradition wins.
And the locals are incredibly stubbornly specific about the timing of it, too. The records say it is always held on October 24th.
Always. Every single year.
Unless
October 24th happens to fall on a Sunday.
the Sunday rule.
You simply cannot disrupt the Welsh Sabbath with bumper cars and cotton candy. So if the 24th is a Sunday, they begrudgingly move it to the 23rd or the 25th.
There's a little piece of poetry about this fair that you shared in our notes. I think it captures the sensory overload of it perfectly.
And the Old Welsh stanza, yes. It translates roughly into English as, Porthaethwy fair is getting near, the cake is out of the oven, in front of the fire is warm beer, and a fair made for loving.
Warm beer and cake. It sounds like a very distinct, slightly chaotic Welsh version of Hig.
It's all about anticipation.
Yeah.
You have to remember, in a very hard, weather-beaten agricultural life, that this one day in October was the explosion of color and noise and socialization for the whole year. It really mattered.
And it still does. By the way, while we're talking about culture, we should quickly drop in a couple of pop culture nods the town gets. Lewis Carroll actually mentions Menai Bridge in a nonsense song in Through the Looking Glass.
He does. The White Knight sings about it.
And Alun Owen, the screenwriter who wrote the Beatles movie A Hard Day's Night, he's a notable person from the area, too.
A lot of creativity concentrated around that strait.
Okay, looking at the time, we've got space for two more hidden things from the sources. One is a hidden garden, and the other is a stunt that frankly seems physically impossible. Let's start with the garden. Plas Cadnant.
The Hidden Gardens. This is a fascinating story of resilience, very similar to the spirit of the town itself. Plas Cadnant is a sprawling 200-acre estate tucked away in a valley near the bridge. But for decades, it was completely overgrown, just lost to the brambles.
Like a literal jungle.
Essentially, yes. Nature took it back. But then a man named Anthony Taverner bought the property and spent nearly 20 years painstakingly restoring it. He was uncovering old stone walls, historic waterfalls, hidden river paths. It was becoming a masterpiece.
And then the year 2015 happened?
Boxing Day 2015. Massive, unprecedented floods hit the region. The old walls of the garden were violently breached. The floodwater just scoured the valley floor.
Oh, no.
They washed away rare, mature plants, completely destroyed the historic paths. 20 years of meticulous daily work just gone in a single night.
That is genuinely heartbreaking.
It was devastating. But much like the town did when the ferry closed centuries earlier, they didn't pack up and quit. They immediately started rebuilding. And they managed to reopen parts of it by Easter the very next year.
That stubbornness again. The absolute refusal to be beaten by the elements.
Exactly.
Okay, finally, the stunt. We've talked about the suspension bridge hovering over the town this whole time. But in 1918, someone decided to interact with that bridge in a way that sounds certifiably insane.
You're talking about Major Thomas Elmhurst. November 12th, 1918.
Which is the exact day after World War I ended.
Right. The armistice has just been signed. Everyone is euphoric. The relief is palpable. Elmhurst is the commanding officer of the Royal Naval Airship Station located on Anglesey, and he decides he wants to celebrate.
By flying an airship.
Well,
where exactly?
Under the Menai Bridge.
Now, hold on. Let's visualize this for everyone. An airship. We are talking about a blimp, a massive gas-filled balloon. And the Menai Bridge is a suspension bridge with thick iron chains hanging down over a narrow gorge.
Yes. The clearance between the water and the bridge is only about 100 feet at high tide.
That's nothing.
And an airship is not a precision instrument like a modern drone. It is massive, sluggish, and highly susceptible to wind. And as we've well established, the strait is incredibly windy.
So he takes this massive, highly flammable bag of hydrogen, flies it down the rocky gorge, and tries to thread the needle between the choppy water and the iron chains.
He did. He flew an SSE-73 airship right under the deck. And he survived.
That has to be the ultimate hold my beer moment of 1918.
It's an incredible visual that really sticks with you. Think about it. The Great War is finally over, the entire world has changed, and this giant, futuristic silver shape is gliding silently under Telford's 19th century stone arches.
Wow.
It's a singular moment where the heavy engineering of the bridge and the daring of the pilot just perfectly aligned.
It's such a cinematic image to end our deep dive on. You know, we started this by pointing out that most people just drive right over the bridge and never bother to look down at the town.
And hopefully going through these sources today has shown you why that is a massive mistake.
I think we definitely have, because when you drive over, you're just crossing a gap. But if you actually stop, get out, and go down to the water, you realize you're standing in a place where Roman legions marched, where a saint prayed alone, where destitute boys were locked on a freezing ship, where grateful refugees built stone walls, and where a guy flew a blimp underneath you.
It really is a perfect microcosm of Welsh history. The bridge gets all the glossy photo ops, but the town holds all the real stories.
It brings me right back to that fake TV garage we talked about earlier.
How so?
Well, we travel to places all the time, and we look at the official sites, right? The castles, the bridges, the things that are printed on the postcards. But those are often just the sets. The real drama, the actual human story, is usually hidden in the weeds or under the water or in a wall built by a guy who used to make cabinets in Belgium.
That is exactly the difference between casual sightseeing and true understanding. The fake shops on the TV set remind us that we always need to look closer at what is actually real.
Exactly. So next time you cross a bridge, any bridge really, maybe you take a second to wonder what's going on underneath it. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us.
It's been a real pleasure.
Catch you next time.